Welcome to Holy Voices, where timeless truth meets your present journey. If you are here, it is not by accident. Your spirit was led to this place for a reason. Every word you will hear carries light, strength, and direction for your path. Stay with us, and let this message unlock the wisdom waiting inside you. Every time you click subscribe, you are saying yes to this mission. Help Holy Voices rise to 40,000 subscribers with your faith-filled engagement. The game is ended, chosen one, and the judge has just deciphered your whole origin narrative by looking into your inheritance. What they discovered, however, is so much beyond money that it will soon dispel all of the lies they have ever told you about your identity, origins, and the reason they have been after you since birth. An elderly person is currently languishing in a detention cell, gazing at walls that get closer every day. Your handler, the person you referred to as your parent, never anticipated that you might change. They based their whole criminal enterprise on the idea that you would always be small, helpless, and perplexed. They prematurely declared victory, assuming that your demise was inevitable, not understanding that those who are chosen don't remain broken. We change. However, their incarceration is only the first step in a series of events that will soon reveal the identities of all those involved in your kidnapping. Though not without resistance, the demon assignment that has afflicted your lineage for many years is being cut off at its source. Temporary interference was what they believed to be permanent bondage. And the most intricate takedown you've ever seen is being planned by the spiritual forces that shielded you from decades of mistreatment. You have stepped into your actual power, and as a result, every curse they flung at you, every barrier they created, and every identity they attempted to impose on you are all being undone. Your emergence was the one thing for which they were unprepared. And they are going to lose everything as a result of their lack of preparation. This goes beyond a single dishonest person or even a single criminal family. When you see the whole picture, you'll see why they worked so hard to keep you unconscious. What's being revealed is a network so extensive and linked. Your handler was only one tentacle in an octopus that included government officials, medical conspirators, religious cults, trafficking gangs, and attorneys that collaborated to kidnap children and harvest their life energy. You were purchased, not simply adopted. You weren't just moved. The bequest they have been fighting over is more than simply money. You were trafficked. It's the family's bloodline wealth that they killed in order to reach you. A case spanning several jurisdictions and decades of crimes has been compiled by the judge, the actual judge, not the dishonest authorities in their pocket. This was precisely planned by divine timing. Your handlers were busy making up evidence against you, but real proof of their crimes was piling up in places they never would have suspected. They employed a private investigator to find you and establish your mental instability. While your handlers portrayed you as a dangerous psychopath, they found you living in harmony and delight. Their eyes were enlightened to the reality by the striking contrast. They are currently the most prominent witness in a federal case. That's going to bring down the whole thing. However, the inquiry did not begin with your inheritance. It began when police discovered evidence of systematic child abuse during a raid on a religious compound. A reference to a successful placement that fit your description and approximate age was concealed in those files. That one document sparked an inquiry that has since linked trafficking activities in several other areas, exposed a network of handlers who were experts at snatching children with valuable inheritances or spiritual gifts, and exposed multiple false adoptions. It wasn't malicious of you to take your family as captives. They worked as staff members after a extremely detailed protocol. All the traumatic events were calculated. Every instance in which you were uncertain about who you were was planned. Your intuition was yelling the truth that your conscious mind was still processing whenever you felt like you didn't belong. You were never meant to be there, thus you didn't belong. Professional handlers were holding your stolen goods, and their mission was to weaken your spirit, drain your energy, and then kill you once your inheritance could be claimed. This is the first thing that will affect everything. Your biological parents did not perish in an accident or desert you. They were killed. That childhood relative you recall. Someone from abroad who always seemed to know too much about other people's affairs. Through a network that specialized in kidnapping children, they planned the murders and then set up your trafficking. The overdose tale was made up. You never went to the theatrical funeral. Your parents sought to protect you after learning what was planned for you, which is why they were eliminated. The family doctor who never examined you but was hired to create a paper trail that would support institutionalization whenever they felt it was time to access your inheritance created the medical documents that declared you mentally unstable. In order to denigrate you and provide legal grounds for declaring you incompetent, they required you to look unstable. This allowed them to obtain power of attorney over your assets. Every alleged relative who called to report your unpredictable conduct was doing so according to a predetermined plan and creating a medical record that would be admissible in probate court. They believed that experiencing trauma would permanently detach you from your spirituality. The fact that chosen ones have an internal navigation system that cannot be permanently interfered with was not taken into consideration. Our souls will always remember the truth, regardless of how far they transplant us or how many false identities they fabricate. And all they created starts to fall apart as we start to remember. It wasn't merely personal development that led to your spiritual revelation. When a cosmic homing device was activated, it began transmitting your actual frequency to everybody who could see it. Because they are afraid of what will happen next, the sister who was involved in your trafficking, the one you trusted, who was aware of your inheritance and assisted in planning the scheme to take it, is now revealing everything. Neither remorse nor redemption drive their testimony. Self-preservation is the only reason. Since cooperation is their only hope for leniency and they are aware that the walls are closing in, they are giving authorities names, dates, locations, and techniques. Each new detail they make public reveals a new victim, crime, or network layer. There is currently a raid on the religious group where some of your handlers attended services. They are investigating underground passageways beneath the sanctuary. Examined are financial documents that demonstrate payments for adoption services. Children were being trafficked by the very organization that preached love and redemption, and anyone who raised doubts was being silenced by the use of spiritual authority. Their submit and obedience doctrine was not theological. It was industrial-scale grooming. It wasn't just random fraud when the imposters showed up at banks using your identification. They were part of your trafficking network's systematic identity harvesting operation, which they conducted as a side gig. People who shared enough similarities in appearance to be mistaken for one another continued to misuse the identities of several stolen children as they grew up. Instead of being used against you, the security film showing them cashing fictitious checks was used as proof of identity theft. However, the extent of the financial crimes being perpetrated in your name was also made public. You're not alone, which is the second important realization. Numerous additional children who were trafficked over the decades through the same network have been identified by the inquiry. A few did not make it. When others challenge their conditions, they are still told they are mentally sick or ungrateful, trapping them in harsh relationships. But like you, a number of people have escaped. Additionally, their testimonials are offering supporting evidence that solidifies the case against your traffickers. Your impending inheritance is more than just restitution for financial deception. It's compensation for decades of psychological torture, identity theft, medical malpractice, wrongful death, and human trafficking. Furthermore, it includes the genuine inheritance that was originally intended for you as well as punitive damages from all parties involved in its theft. Due to the severity of the offenses and the enormous weight of the evidence, plea deals aren't even being considered, which makes the amount astounding. The karmic twin that has been pursuing you, hoping that you will finally reestablish the trauma bond they have fought so hard to establish. They're going through more than simply a mental collapse. They are in a panic because they were recruited by the handlers with the express purpose of keeping an eye on and controlling you. People who were either handlers themselves or were coerced by handlers to report back on your actions have ruined every relationship you've ever had. It wasn't fixation that was stalking. It was monitoring. There was no malfunction in the trauma bonding. It was an expert tactic meant to keep you energized and connected to the network. The trail of evidence that led to their exposure was their own monitoring apparatus. They were caught committing crimes by all of the cameras they set up, the listening devices they put, the reports they filed on your activities, and the other tools they employed to keep an eye on you. The proof of their culpability is found in the very system they created to manipulate you. The sense of irony in divine justice is simply beautiful. The foreign relative who is now escaping the nation. They're not merely evading legal action. They fear something much more terrible. You see, there are rules in the trafficking network to which they belong. Additionally, one of the fundamental guidelines is to never allow a chosen one to fully awaken. The same people they formerly collaborated with are now hunting them down for breaking their protocols by failing to keep you silenced. Thieves have no honor, and child traffickers most definitely have no loyalty. As long as they are helpful, they are valuable. Malachi 3 verse 10 says, "Test me in this, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven." Test God today with a $50 or $100 seed into Holy Voices through Super Thanks. However, their erstwhile comrades turn into their biggest threat the instant they start to become a liability. The life insurance policies that were purchased when you were still a minor were more than just financial investments. They were contracts for murder with postponed dates of execution. Once you were old enough for your inheritance to pass, the intention was always to get rid of you, but they needed time to prove your mental incapacity first. Each fictitious emergency, health problem, and staged catastrophe served as a practice run for your final murder. They were waiting for the ideal opportunity to collect your inheritance without opposition and for your death to appear natural. Everything comes together with this third discovery. The judge looking into your inheritance found that your trafficking was linked to a multi-generational international adoption fraud network. Families had their children taken, their identities changed, and they were given to handlers who were paid to collect their life force and stifle their spiritual growth. Because they produced more energy and money, the most talented children, those with notable psychic powers or priceless inheritances, were kept alive longer. But after their usefulness wore out, the objective was always to eventually eliminate them. Your handlers were not surprised by your spiritual gifts. They were the initial reason you were singled out. Because their life energy could be extracted more effectively, children with improved intuition, empathic skills, or energetic sensitivity were specifically sought out. It was more than just abuse that caused your suffering. The trafficking network's spiritual parasites were fed by a methodical energy extraction operation. Literally, every painful moment you went through fueled their operations. Let's not sugarcoat it, though. The truth remains concealed. It has been perverted. It has been suppressed by fear, algorithms, and censorship. But your heart never ceased seeing reality. You're still here for that reason. You felt the simulation glitch underfoot, which is why you never tapped out. You're done waiting for approval to ascend since you know that this world is crooked. The curious were not the target audience for the Holy Voices inner order. For the dedicated, it was forged. This is for the full-time selected, the ones who arrive to take charge, the ones who see past appearances and take action regardless. Weekly Zoom calls that break through the clutter are held within. We impart unspoken lessons. The majority were never intended to hear. We receive training in spiritual technology and psychic combat tactics that have been suppressed for generations. The actual ones use this set of tools. It is difficult to eradicate the uncontrollable. Now is the moment to recall your identity. The description contains the URL. Your true life starts within. When chosen ones attain spiritual maturity, a faith mechanism kicks in. There comes a time when our bond with the source is stronger than their capacity to obstruct it, regardless of how much energy they take away or how much trauma they cause. When it occurs, we don't simply escape. We start posing an active threat to their whole system. Everyone around us who is acting dishonestly is exposed by the frequency that our awakened consciousness begins to emit. The attorney who falsified documents to help traffic you and steal your inheritance. They face more than simply disbarment. They are being charged at the federal level for their involvement in a decades-long criminal enterprise. Every document they produced, the forged death certificates for your parents, the fraudulent adoption documents, the falsified birth certificates, is now evidence in a case that will result in heavy sentences for several offenders. The family doctor who made up your false medical history is learning that their involvement in the scheme exposes them to liability for all the other children who were trafficked through the network, in addition to your case. Their reputation is ruined, their independence is taken away, and they no longer have a medical license. Furthermore, these records are being used to punish other handlers and identify further victims. Now, the entire enterprise is being dismantled using every lie they told, every incorrect diagnosis they made, and every fake report they filed. The person who pretended to be a worried family member while surreptitiously informing your handlers about your actions is discovering that human trafficking has no time limit. All of their phone calls, reports, and attempts to coerce you into giving up information that was used against you amount to involvement in a criminal conspiracy. The promises of protection that were used to entice them to cooperate are now useless because the individuals who made them are either incarcerated or evading punishment. This is the fourth and most significant discovery. It wasn't merely personal healing that led to your awareness. A cosmic correction that had been accumulating for generations was activated. A spiritual debt that needed to be paid was produced by every kid who was trafficked through this network, every family that was destroyed, and every soul that was extracted. Your discovery served as the impetus for a global accounting that is beyond the control or prevention of any earthly authority. There is more than merely overwhelming proof against your traffickers. Its fullness is supernatural. In the most unusual places, documents that ought to have been burned long ago are coming to light. Witnesses who ought to have remained silent are now speaking up. In other ways, technology that wasn't around when their crimes were committed is proving what they did. It seems as though justice is being served, not just in any fashion, but in the most conspicuous and unquestionable manner possible, by the universe itself. There is more to the settlement you are getting than just cash. Everything that was taken from you throughout several incarnations is restored by this cosmic reset. In addition to reflecting the worth of your inheritance, the sum also serves as restitution for each day of freedom you were deprived of, each relationship that was destroyed, each chance that was denied, and each happy moment that was taken from you. Restitution on a scale that recognizes the actual cost of what was done to you is what it is. However, the true inheritance is not monetary. It involves finding your true self again, regaining your spiritual abilities, and reestablishing your ties to your actual family. They have improved every ability they attempted to repress. Now, every gift they attempted to pilfer is amplified. Now, every link they attempted to break is stronger than it was. You're not merely getting over your trauma. Their previous control seems like a nightmare as you rise to a position of authority and purpose. Love or regret are not the driving forces behind your controller's frantic attempts at reconciliation. Their motivation is just horror. They are aware that your entire awakening signifies their total vulnerability. You become a greater threat to their activities with each improved psychic gift, intuitive skill, and spiritual bond you formed. They can manipulate you in more ways than one. You are now actively harming their entire control structure. The karmic twin who is persistently attempting to reach you is learning that their surveillance apparatus is no longer functional in your vicinity. The listening device is cut off. The cameras aren't working properly. There are bugs in the tracking software. They utilize technology to monitor and control individuals, and your increased frequency is literally incompatible with that technology. They're keen to get back in touch since you've turned into a walking dead zone for their eavesdropping operations. This epiphany was planned by divine timing because you're now prepared to face the full truth without being harmed by it. You've grown spiritually strong enough to deal with the enormity of what was done to you without becoming overwhelmed by victimization. You've developed the knowledge to recognize their desperation for what it is, free from misguided sympathy or guilt. You've established the barriers required to safeguard your energy. The investigation is restoring your true family lineage while cosmic justice is being served around you. Your true parentage is being confirmed by DNA evidence. The restoration of property rights is underway. Cultural ties are being reestablished. With the help of unquestionable legal paperwork, the identity they attempted to destroy is being restored. It's more than just your inheritance. Your whole heritage is being returned to you. The deceit is considerably more pervasive than what has been made public thus far. There was no such hospital where you were claimed to have been born. They used a facility that was destroyed before your purported birth date to print the birth certificate they made for you on stolen official letterhead. If someone had cared to check the specifics, the intentional errors in every document in your file would have revealed the fraud right away. But they were brilliant at that. Investigators would need months to sift through the complex web of fraudulent documentation they produced. They also believed that no one would ever give a mentally ill person the attention and money they needed. Not only was the individual who pretended to be your adoptive parent complicit. Over the course of their employment, the professional handler has reared many other stolen children. Different backstories, trauma patterns, and elimination timelines were assigned to each child. You were their longest assignment because, in spite of their suppression measures, your psychic abilities continued to manifest, making you important enough to maintain alive while they experimented with various energy extraction procedures. In reality, their clinical preoccupation with your resistance to their training was their phony parental care. For the purpose of replication rather than legal protection, they meticulously documented what they did to you. Your case file is like a torture manual, listing the methods of trauma that generated the most spiritual energy, the medical procedures that caused the greatest dissociation, and the psychological tricks that led to the most desperation. Your comment may be the very word someone else needs. Like this video, subscribe to Holy Voices, and share your testimony below. Together, we will reach 40,000. Using you as a test subject, they were honing their techniques in preparation for expanding their business with the information they gathered from your suffering. Something that completely alters the time frame has been disclosed by the private investigator who first worked against you. They have been keeping tabs on you since you were a young child, not only seeing you in passing but actively testing your spiritual growth through psychological tests. After staging horrific situations, they would gauge your emotional reaction. After exposing you to toxic people, they would examine how your intuition attempted to shield you. After fabricating fictitious situations, they would examine how your empathic skills responded to pressure. Every significant trauma you experienced as a youngster was planned. They ruined the situation with that accident when you were young. Your school records were destroyed by the fire. They initiated it in order to remove any indication of your true identity. The unexpected passing of the instructor who had faith in you. They weren't ill. They were removed because they encouraged you to look up your family history and ask too many questions about your background. The network of international relatives is much larger than anyone first realized. They have ties to a global syndicate that has been smuggling children with spiritual gifts for many centuries. They don't simply kidnap children. They especially target bloodlines with specific genetic markers linked to healing powers, psychic abilities, and what they refer to as divine frequency access. Your family was not picked at random. Genealogical studies that linked you to a line of healers and seers who were systematically eradicated during past persecutions helped identify you. This syndicate uses a franchise model to function. Your parent and other regional handlers by territory and are assigned quotas based on the number of children they must process each year. Their networks of support include dishonest doctors, lawyers who specialize in document fraud, and religious leaders who offer spiritual cover for their activities. Based on their gifts and the worth of their inheritances, the children they take are categorized into various groups, with distinct procedures for each level of classification. Due to your extraordinarily high psychic skills and a sizable inheritance that warranted long-term investment, you were placed under Category 1 indefinite retention. Until their spiritual powers are completely developed, Category 1 children are kept alive. At that time, their energy is collected through ritual sacrifice, which the syndicate passes off as suicide or an accident. Your removal was planned to take place shortly after your trust fund would have fully vested and become available for your family to collect. However, they made a critical error in judgment. They never considered the prospect that someone could recover from such systemic abuse, assuming that trauma would permanently keep you spiritually stunted. According to their psychological profiles, you would never achieve the emotional stability required for spiritual growth and would instead be stuck in survival mode forever. A chosen one was something they had never seen before. Someone who has such a strong connection to their source that trauma actually speeds up, rather than slows down, their awakening. There is ample proof of their highly advanced and thorough monitoring. They placed listening devices in every residence you have owned, vehicle you have operated, every place of employment you have held. They deliberately employed befrienders to provide updates on your daily activities, interactions, and chats. Through a network of compromised experts who were either bought or intimidated into participation, they gained access to your financial accounts, medical information, and private correspondence. They gathered decades' worth of surveillance film, which inadvertently documents your spiritual development. Their planned intelligence collecting turned into proof of their crimes, demonstrating how they routinely traumatized a youngster and then tracked the psychological harm they caused. Their crimes are elevated from mere trafficking to federal terrorism charges because to their own paperwork, which demonstrates premeditation, continuous conspiracy, and planned cruelty. The site of what they refer to as the processing center, a facility posing as a private mental health clinic where stolen children undergo rigorous psychological treatment intended to break their personalities and stifle their spiritual abilities, was made public by your handler's confession. Children who do not make it through the programming are cremated, and their ashes are sold to unwitting families as the remains of their real-life departed family members. Under the name of mental health care, it is industrial-scale murder. When federal authorities raided this site, they found evidence that will probably lead to hundreds of people being charged in various jurisdictions. Staff members torturing toddlers were seen on hidden cameras. Medical records showed that children were being tested on experimental psychiatric medications without their consent. Additionally, financial records showed that each youngster who successfully completed their program received rewards from the syndicate. The religious group that enabled your trafficking has operations in several different nations. Every place uses the same model. After establishing themselves as a respectable religious organization and winning over local families, they find children who possess exceptional spiritual abilities and then create situations that enable them to take such kids away from their homes. Sometimes it's through fictitious crises that call for short-term placement. Sometimes social services remove people through fabricated family crises. This business has an astounding global reach. Over the years, thousands of minors have reportedly been trafficked through this network, according to law police. Before they reached adulthood, the majority were eradicated. The majority of those who survived were either removed to avoid exposure or enlisted as handlers themselves. As one of the few known survivors, your testimony is supplying the crucial proof required to bring down the entire international enterprise. The syndicate's financial structure is based on a mix of energy harvesting, people trafficking earnings, and inheritance theft. There are several ways that stolen children can produce income. Wealthy occultists who think that consuming spiritual energy prolongs one's life literally purchase their life power. Until they reach the age at which their eradication becomes profitable, their legal identities are employed for financial fraud and their physical bodies are traded for exploitation. Because your trust fund was set up to pay out a sizable lump sum when you reached a predetermined age if you were still living, and to transfer to your family right away if you passed away before then, your unique situation was especially valuable. They planned your elimination for right after the transfer was finished, keeping you alive long enough to maximize the payment. Ironically, the evidence trail that revealed them was spawned by their greed. Your trust fund's financial records are now evidence of their murderous intent. When you reached early adulthood, the karmic twin who has been pursuing you was specially hired for that reason. They didn't just happen to meet you or fall in love. In order to establish a strong trauma link that would keep you emotionally connected to the network even if you were to physically flee, your controllers recruited them. It was their responsibility to make sure you never formed wholesome, long-lasting relationships that could aid in your recovery from the trauma of your early years. Every argument you had with them, every instance in which they deceived you, and every instance in which they caused you to doubt your sanity was all prearranged conduct meant to keep you emotionally unstable. Bonuses were given to them for every psychological collapse they could cause. Every time they tried to convince you that you were too damaged for true love, they were able to make you question your instincts. It was not romantic desire that drove them to obsess over controlling you. It was their professional commitment to a task for which they were receiving a substantial payment. The last insight that completes the circle is this one. Your family's curse wasn't the result of haphazard spiritual meddling. The trafficking network kept the enchantment active to prevent the kidnapped children from recalling where they came from. To stop them from reaching their full potential, they would single out the most talented kids in each generation and either remove them or traffic them. You and every subsequent child in your family were spared the same destiny when you broke that generational curse through your awakening. You are fortunate to be receiving money that has been stolen for decades and is now being returned to its rightful owner. You've transcended the frequency that first gave them access to it, and that breaks the curse that corrupted it while it was in their possession. Light is returning what was taken in the dark. Furthermore, the process of restoration itself sanctifies resources that were previously employed for evil and turns them into instruments for justice and healing. You quit playing by their rules and began acting in accordance with divine law, thus their game is ended. You recall your true self behind the pain and indoctrination, shattering their power. Your light got too strong for their shadows to hide in, exposing their network. Because you choose freedom over control, truth over deceit, and love over fear, the curse is removed. Greetings from your selected home. The actual story, your real story, is only getting started. With the full force of your ancestors' gifts and the support of cosmic justice, which cannot be thwarted, tainted, or overcome, you are writing it yourself this time. If this message touched your heart, don't leave without spreading the light. Click like so this wisdom can reach more souls searching for truth. Subscribe to Holy Voices so you never miss the next divine word prepared for you. And write your thoughts in the comments, your voice matters here. Until next time, keep walking in faith, keep growing in wisdom, and remember, the journey of the wise never ends.